Okay, my clock says it is 10:01, so let's send live. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is David Steinberg, hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Logan Hain is the clerk of this hearing. This hearing is being recorded via Microsoft Teams and will be available afterward through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website, sfpublicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there is no sign-in sheet, so if you would like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the address listed on the hearing order, which is nicholas.huff@sfdpw.org. This public hearing is being held to consider one item, order number 203139, Submission Rock project consideration and possible action to grant subdivider's request for deferral of conditions of approval for a number of things. My job today as a hearing officer is to gather the facts of the hearing item, listen to testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final determinations. When the Director's determinations are made, the Department will notify you of them if you have provided contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. Then I will allow any member of the public or witness who wants to speak, and the Department, if the Department would like to address any comments, may make a final statement. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you're a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comments, then dial 1, then 0 to put yourself in a queue to speak. You will receive a message that your line is unmuted when it is your turn. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the agency. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We will now begin the hearing. May I have Public Works make its presentation, please? We need to unmute. I believe John Thomas is going to be making a presentation.
My apologies. I thought Logan was unmuting me. Good morning, hearing officer. This is John Thomas with Public Works, here to present a request for deferrals and an infrastructure plan amendment, a request for approval of the deferrals and infrastructure plan amendment to the Mission Rock project. I'd like to talk a little bit about the project itself and then go into detail on each of the exception requests and a little bit of detail on the infrastructure plan amendment. The project was approved, environmental approval was received in October of 2017. Subsequent to that, the Board of Supervisors adopted an MOU for interagency cooperation amongst the various agencies participating, and an ordinance approving a development agreement between the City of San Francisco and the Seawall Lot Associates, which now are the Mission Rock Partners. That was in February of 2018. Since that time, the developer has submitted a written request for approval of various design modifications and exceptions, and I will go through those in detail. The project itself, for those of you who do not know, is located adjacent to the Mission Creek and the bay, and is on fill and compressible young bay mud. In addition to the complications presented by that material, the developer has also addressed sea level rise by designing raising the site by 5.5 feet. And in order to minimize the settlement of that additional fill, have looked at a number of different options. The initial infrastructure plan described the use of structured streets, and quite a lot of time was spent developing design of the structured street proposal, and then ultimately considered other ground improvement technologies, which the city is now considering and are also part of the exception requests. The project itself will construct some 550 units of housing in several buildings, and in addition to that, we'll have 2 buildings with commercial offices, parks, and other amenities for the neighborhood. So with that, I'd like to go into a discussion of the exceptions that are requested. So exception number 1 is deferral of public works, Bureau of Street Use and Mapping Permits Division, condition of approval number 2, requirement for a major encroachment permit for private utilities located in the public right-of-way. The development envisions utilizing a private utility system for heating and chilling of the facilities. These will not be transferred to the city or not be asked to accept those, and will be maintained by the development from then on. So this is a deferral of that major encroachment permit, as I think additional work needs to be performed on the exact locations so that we can define those encroachments moving forward. The second exception is a deferral of Public Works, Bureau of Street Use and Mapping, Permits Division, condition of approval number 8, which includes but is not limited to 8D, L, and M. Beginning with 8D, the Permits Division 8D requires the city engineer in consultation with the affected city departments to adopt a set of final performance criteria for lightweight cellular concrete infrastructure design through a subsequent Public Works order. For the past year, design consultants have been working with the developer to provide the technical information that the city requires to consider and review this. The city has also adopted an independent technical advisory panel to advise its approval process. That is still underway, and as such, we are requesting that this condition be deferred. Condition 8L requires the subdivider working with the city to draft proposed amendments to the Public Works Code and corresponding Public Works regulations and the Port Code that will govern the use of lightweight cellular concrete, and to work with the city to finalize such amendments and regulations for the consideration of the Board of Supervisors, the Public Works Director, the City Engineer, and the Chief Harbor Engineer. The Port and City will consider amendments to the Public Works Code and regulations, as well as amendments to the Port Code, following the City Engineer's adoption of approved criteria when those are finally developed.
John?
Yes.
Can I interrupt you for just a second? I'm looking, there's a possibility that we're having some slight technical difficulties, so I don't want you to, we may have to have you start again. I apologize.
No, thank you, John. Everything on my end says that we are sending live and that the content is being broadcast, but David is telling me that the live event is having some glitches. So I'm trying to figure out what I can do, but okay, all I can do is David are saying I'm live.
Right, and I will also tell you that my second screen says now it changed from it hasn't started to the live event will continue in a moment. So I suspect if you
that was on purpose, and I'm attempting to reconnect.
Yes. Yeah. Again, apologies anyone who's on the line. It's we'll want to make sure we do this right so we don't have to continue it and re-notice and do it again. The joys of technology.
I am going to dial out and I'm going to dial back in and see if that resets the issue. Please give me approximately about 45 seconds.
Thank you.
All right, it appears at this time that sound is working and that we are being heard even though the screen is not displaying properly. At least that is my understanding from the outside.
So given that, should we start again or what?
I would say if the audio is going live, it means it is being recorded, in which case that will suffice. Oh, second.
I believe we may have just fixed the issue, and I think our displays are up and running correctly. I think we can pick up where we left off unless there is a major objection. That is David's call.
I am still looking for, it is showing live, and I'm still getting a note saying it is, there we go, and now we have visual, at least I do. Okay, out of an abundance of caution, if there's no objection, I am going to read. I'm going to start with the intro again, just to be sure that we have everything, all of our dots crossed and our T's I'd. Okay, so again, apologies, but Let me go through this again very quickly. My name is David Steinberg. I'm hearing officer for San Francisco Public Works. Logan Hain is the clerk of this hearing. The hearing is being recorded via Microsoft Teams. Will be available afterwards through a link on the San Francisco Public Works website. That's at publicworks.org. As this is a virtual hearing, there's a sign-in sheet. So if you'd like to receive information about the results of this hearing, please send an email to the contact listed on the agenda notice. This public hearing is being held to consider one item. Order number 203139, Mission Rock Project consideration and possible action to grant subdividers request for deferral of conditions of approval. My job as a hearing officer is to gather the facts of this hearing item, listen to your testimonies, and help our Director of Public Works make determinations. I will not be making any decisions today. Instead, I will forward the findings from this hearing and make my recommendations to the Director. The Director will make the final determination. When the Director's determinations are made, the Department will notify you of them if you have provided contact information. The hearing will proceed as follows. I will ask Public Works staff to speak first and present the case. Then, if any member of the public or witness wants to speak, they may do so. Then the department can have the final word if it would like to address any comments. Each speaker will have up to 3 minutes to speak. The clerk will monitor the time for all speakers and will indicate when the speaker has 30 seconds left. If you're a member of the public or witness who wants to speak, wait for me to call for public comment, then dial 1, then 0 to put yourself in the queue to speak. You will receive a message that your line is unmuted when it is your turn. Comments and questions should be addressed to me and not to the department or the applicant. If you cannot finish your comments within the allotted time, you may submit written testimony to me by the end of this hearing. If I feel that a question is warranted, I will ask the question. After all comments are completed, I will close the item. We'll now begin with the hearing. Again, apologies for the technical difficulties. John Thomas presenting for Public Works.
Before we do that, this is Judson True, the Mayor's Director of Housing Delivery. My understanding is that there may not be, I want to be very clear that there is audio available on the call-in line. Is that what was being reset, or is that what the technical issue was with the first run through? Because I'm hearing there may still be some issues there. I want to be sure that that works.
Yes, the call-in line is active, and yes, the call-in line is active. So when we call for questions, it will be people can dial in. The problem was that the audio was working, but initially the view, the screen presentation was not an absolute requirement because for our general hearings we only record the audio, but we have the capability to do both. So we want to be able to present it so that everyone can both see what is being presented and hear. So there should not be a problem with the caller.
Thank you, Mr. Hearing Officer.
And now, again, apologies. So John Thomas, if you want to unmute yourself, you can make your presentation now.
Thank you, Hearing Officer. Just from where I'm looking, my screen is just showing blue. It is not showing, I think, the agenda that was up earlier. I don't know if others are seeing the same.
I am seeing it as I log in as a member of the public. I'm having trouble when I do it as a participant. I don't know what that means, but
okay,
as long as the public, it means that the public can see. Yes. Yeah,
as long as the public can see it, then
yeah,
that's fine. So one last point of clarification. Do you wish me to start from the beginning, or?
Out of an abundance of caution, yes, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. All right. Good morning, Hearing Officer John Thomas with Public Works, here to discuss conditions of approval from the tentative map that are being deferred in anticipation of the Board of Supervisors' consideration of the final map. And staff is recommending approval of the infrastructure plan amendment as well. So what I'd like to do is go through a little bit about the Mission Rock project, and then discuss the 5 exceptions that are being requested, and then obviously be available to answer any questions that may be out there. So the project was approved, received environmental approval in October of 2017, the port approved the project in a development agreement in January of 2018, and the Board of Supervisors adopted the MOU with the interagency cooperation agreement between Public Works, MTA, the city administrator, the board, the mayor, and the PUC. And then subsequent to that, the Board of Supervisors adopted an ordinance 33-18 approving a development agreement for the project between the city of San Francisco and Seawall Lot 337 Associates, now known as Mission Rock Partners. Since that time, the subdivider has submitted a written request for approval of various design modifications and exceptions as defined in the subdivision regulations for alternative designs and relief from certain standard requirements from the regulations. We will go through those exceptions in detail in a moment. The project, the Mission Rock project, is located adjacent to Mission Creek. It is next to 3rd Street and south of the Giants ballpark. The site will contain 550 units of housing, 2 buildings for commercial offices, and several parks and other public amenities. Being adjacent to the bay, the site has been sorry, my dog is making some noise here, but is on fill and compressible young bay mud. I'm going to have to relocate myself, my apologies. Due to the nature of that material, the development partners have, together with their engineering team, looked at alternatives to prevent settlement in these locations. The initial infrastructure plan described structured streets as an option to providing this support, and since that time they have looked at alternative ground improvements, including the use of lightweight cellular concrete. The exceptions that we'll discuss today include deferring some of those approvals. So exception number 1 is a deferral of Public Works Bureau of Street Use and Mapping Permits Division, condition of approval number 2, requirement for a major encroachment permit for private utilities located in the public right-of-way. Part of the development project's goal is to provide a district energy system that provides heated and chilled water to buildings within the project, reducing reliance on electricity for building heating and cooling. This will be a privately maintained utility and as such will require a major encroachment permit for those portions located within the public right-of-way. The subdivider is currently requesting a deferral of this approval. For exception number 2 is deferral of Public Works Bureau of Street Use and Mapping Permits Division, condition of approval number 8, including but not limited to 8D, L, and M. (8D) Permits Division condition of approval requires the city engineer in consultation with the affected city departments to adopt a set of final performance criteria for lightweight cellular concrete. Lightweight cellular concrete design through a subsequent Public Works order. The subdivider has submitted proposed LCC infrastructure designs for review by the city, and an independent technical advisory panel has been selected to help provide guidance and review of these documents together with the city engineering staff. The city engineer and affected city agencies are currently vetting the technical review report described in the permits condition of approval 8B and the results of the pilot described in condition of approval 8C. Once that review is completed and approved criteria must be adopted through a subsequent Public Works order as a condition to subdivider constructing using lightweight cellular concrete. Condition 8L Permits Division Condition of Approval 8L requires the subdivider working with the city to draft proposed amendments, if required, to the Public Works Code and corresponding Public Works regulations and the Port Code that will govern lightweight cellular concrete, and to work with the city to finalize such amendments and regulations for the consideration of the Board of Supervisors, the Public Works Director, the city engineer, and the Chief Harbor Engineer. The Port and City will consider amendments to the Public Works Code and regulations, as well as any amendments to the Port Code following the city engineer's adoption of approved criteria for the use of LCC as contemplated by the Permit Division Condition of Approval 8D. Condition 8M, Permits Division Condition of Approval 8M requires notice to be recorded with respect to all lots adjacent to streets with lightweight cellular concrete separately from the CC&Rs, informing building and/or condominium owners of the responsibility for repair and liability for unsafe conditions in the sidewalk in accordance with municipal code provisions. The notice must also include notice of financial responsibility for maintenance and repair of all flexible lateral connections. Exception number 3. Deferral of port conditions of approval number 5, requiring a license including consideration of rent for proposed DES facilities or other private utilities and service providers. Exception number 4, deferral of port condition of approval number 6, requirement to obtain egress rights from the port prior to submitting a related phased final map for Lot 1. This requires that on a related phased final map for Lot 1, if subdivider intends to use Lot A or G for egress, subdivider must obtain egress rights from the port prior to submitting the related phase final map. The form of egress rights may be a letter from the port subject to approval of a site permit for development on Lot A or G. Exception number 5, exception to the 10-day notice requirements for director's hearing pursuant to the subdivision code of the City and County of San Francisco. The subdivision code of the City and County of San Francisco requires 10 days notice prior to holding a public hearing concerning exceptions, waivers, or deferrals of conditions of approval. Due to extenuating circumstances surrounding the COVID pandemic, the director held a public hearing to consider subdivider's request for the above described exceptions and deferrals after providing 7 days notice of the hearing. Notice was published in the San Francisco Examiner starting on May 14th and was published through the date of the hearing on May 21st. The director previously held a public hearing to consider the tentative map and the adoption of order number 202368, and the director held an additional public hearing prior to the adoption of order number 202297, both of which were preceded by 10 days notice and neither of which resulted in any public comment. The final map will be subject to an open public meeting process, subject to all applicable notice and comment requirements. Accordingly, granting this exception has been determined to be reasonable to avoid unnecessary delays in processing the final map in light of extenuating circumstances. That concludes the exceptions that are being requested. As I mentioned, we are also requesting approval of the infrastructure plan amendment. I believe that concludes my presentation. Are there any questions?
Okay, I have no questions. So at this point, if there are any public comments or questions on the item in the presentation, and any member of the public or witness who wants to speak, please dial 1, then 0.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
Okay, so press dial 1, then 0 to put yourself in the queue to speak. You'll receive a message that your line is unmuted when it's your turn. So we'll wait to see if there's anyone who wishes to speak, and we'll allow them to do so. Okay. It does not appear that anyone has virtually raised a hand, in which case we will close the Q&A and public speaker portion.
David?
Yep.
I was just realizing I probably should expand just slightly on the infrastructure plan amendment. The request in this amendment is to provide for additional ground improvement options to be considered by the city of San Francisco. So as I had mentioned earlier, the original concept was to use a structured streets, essentially a street on piles. And since that time, the developer has been evaluating alternative ground improvement methods, including the use of lightweight cellular concrete. So that is, broadly speaking, what we are looking to include in the infrastructure plan amendment and have approved by the director.
Okay, thank you. Since there is no one has requested to speak publicly, again, if the department has any further comments that would like to make, you can do so now.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
Okay, so again, this is just a final opportunity. If anyone would like to make a comment, statement, or ask a question, you can do so now. Again, you press 1 and then 0. We'll leave this open for a little bit to see if anyone indicates that they want to speak. Okay, hearing none, we'll close comments.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0.
Okay, it does not appear that there are any public comments or questions. Unless the department has a final summation, I will close the hearing. Hearing nothing, I want to thank everyone for your patience as we work through this virtual hearing world. I will now close the hearing. So this hearing is now closed, and I will make my recommendation to the director. Thank you all very much for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you.